Welcome, and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Kevin Cox, CDM Program Manager at the Department of Homeland Security, Willie Crenshaw, CDM Program Executive at NASA, Ben Liberty, CDM Program Manager in the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the Department of the Interior, Greg Amori, Director of Civilian Agencies and Mid-Atlantic at Fort Scout Technologies, Dennis Riley, Vice President of Federal at Gigamon, and Tom Welsh, Director of Systems Engineering, FireEye, Public Sector. A decade ago, the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Ron Burgess, told me the greatest threat to U.S. national security is the pace of change. General Burgess said the same thing on Capitol Hill during testimony at the worldwide threat briefings. He said technological developments pose the biggest threat and the biggest risk. He said the speed and skill of cyber criminals, both freelance and nation state, posed an inordinate challenge to the U.S. government and the private sector for cybersecurity professionals. Since that time, numerous developments and steps have been made and taken to try to stay ahead of these threats, and one of them is CDM, the government's Continuous Diagnostic and Mitigation Program. And on this program, we're going to examine the objectives, the status, and the challenges posed. The CDM program enhances government network security through automated control testing and progress tracking. This approach provides services to implement sensors and dashboards. It delivers near real-time results, prioritizes the worst problems within minutes versus quarterly or annually. It enables defenders to identify and mitigate flaws at network speed, and it lowers operational risk and exploitation of government IT systems and networks. So I'd like to start off today with Kevin. And the question that I'd like to throw your way, first of all, today, Kevin, is I'd like you to set the table for us and tell us what's number one on your list right now, considering where we are in this process of using CDM as a defense mechanism.
Good morning, JJ. Thank you for inviting us here today. Where we are today, we've been working with our agency partners as well as industry partners as well to get the foundation laid for the agencies to be able to do cybersecurity continuous monitoring. So our number one priority is to fill any remaining gaps for that, make sure that agencies have full visibility of their environments, know what's on the network, have full visibility of their user base, who's on the network. And then in parallel with getting that foundation in place, we also want to begin expanding out to the network, out to the cloud, helping agencies understand what's happening on the network. So at the end of the day, they will have full visibility of their entire enterprise, where all of their data is, know who all of their users are, and be able to continue to tighten up their cybersecurity posture.
If you look at where you are today, as opposed to 10 years ago, how much of a difference would you say having this program has made in terms of getting your work done?
I think it's made a tremendous difference both for us at the federal level, but also down at the agency level. Again, we've partnered with the agencies to identify where they have some gaps, to help them get a fuller understanding of what is out in their environment. And we have found from the inception of the program that we have helped agencies discover close to 50% additional assets than what they were aware of in near real time. So that's been a big win for the program, a big win for the agencies, just to have that near real time or real time understanding of what their networks look like. And so we just want to continue building on that, again, helping them understand who all of their users are, in particular their privileged users, and then really expand out wherever they have data and wherever it needs to be protected.
Willie, based on what you've heard Kevin tell us about today, where's your agency, how are you doing, and what successes can you share with us today?
One of the main things that Kevin has just said, JJ, is the partnership between the agency and DHS. With NASA, we're a very complex, environment. So we've been able to deploy fully into the NASA environment. And that's to cover both the corporate and the mission networks. So through the CDM program, and we will continue to do that, we've been able to discover those assets where it may have been hidden or wasn't being reported before. So the main part for us is that it's increased our security, but also it's brought more awareness to what's in our environment. Mm-hmm. So it's been a success at NASA, and we believe it'll continue to be a success at NASA.
And Ben Liberty, help us fill in, I guess, the rest of the conversation on what agencies may be challenged with and where you go first when you're looking for places to find success while implementing some of these practices.
Yeah, so right now we've been kind of focused on operationalizing CDM because CDM has been going on for quite some time now, but to actually make it operational, that's really what we've been focused on. In particular, the phase 1 capabilities. So there's 4 of them. We're focused on 3 of them: vulnerability management, hardware and software asset management. Configuration settings management was de-scoped from the Task Order 2 contract. So that's coming back in now under Defend. But since that's a little bit further behind, we're focused on operationalizing the other 3. However, to make operationalization effective, you really need a dashboard. And the CDM dashboard, from our perspective right now, isn't quite ready for full-time operations. So what we're doing is, to Willie and Willie's point earlier, is we're partnering with DHS on an operational study where we can actually delve deeper into some of those dashboard challenges, among others. So we can kind of uncover some lessons that can be applied not only to Department of the Interior, but for the rest of the federal government at large.
Just briefly, can you give us a sense of how you're going about that study?
Yeah, so we're coordinating it's mostly interview based. Uh-huh. The way that DOI is focused, all the CDM capabilities, whether it's the hardware asset management capability or software asset management, vulnerability management, et cetera. DOI is organized where we have leads that lead those particular tools. And the same applies to the integration layer as well as the dashboard layer. So each of those tools and architectural layers have leads, and we're meeting with DHS with those leads and myself as a program manager to do interviews to go into some of those operational challenges.
Mm-hmm. Tom Welsh, FireEye, can you assist us in our quest to understand how industry sees this complex picture we've been talking about? And just walk us through some of the areas where you've been able to help government in its own cyber journey.
Absolutely, and thank you, JJ, for inviting us this morning. I think to dovetail on some of Ben's comments, really our clients are looking at how they best operationalize the objectives of CDM. So when we look at the threat landscape and the particular vulnerabilities and tooling and technologies that are available to agencies, it's not just enough to look at that, but it's also important to look at having an intelligence-led security program. How do you identify the data, your high-value assets, understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures that the adversary is going to use? It really ties back to the overarching objectives of CDM. How do we make sure that we identify risk on an ongoing basis, prioritize those risks according to the severity, and then mitigate the most important challenges first?
So if you think about what you've heard the government representative talk about today and what Tom just mentioned, what outside of that construct have you found yourself dealing with most? Is there something other than what we've heard about today that's at the top of your list of to-do? And how does that change, say, as time passes? I mentioned at the top of this that one of the key concerns is the pace of change. There's constant change, so it's not just that you're doing more and better things to achieve your mission, but the adversaries are too. So just wondering, are there some things outside of what we've heard from today that are at the top of Scouts lists?
So I think, our adversaries are obviously getting smarter all the time, and they're always it's a cat and mouse game to try and keep up with them in the most part. So where you see vulnerabilities a couple years ago, they've shifted, and now we see new threats coming online. That happens, that's just the nature of our business. Forescout in particular is looking at every IP connected device on someone's network. Traditional IPs we've known about, we talked about, it's the non-traditional, the TVs that are connected to the internet, the phones that are connected to the internet, the ICS, industrial control systems that are connected. Those are where the new threats are coming from, or that's another area that we're very focused on.
And have you found with this new group or area where you're finding devices that are bringing new threat realities to you, have you found it more difficult to deal with those devices than the traditional ones?
So for us, not really. It's in the nature of how our technology works. We're not an agent-based technology, we're agentless. So anything that connects via the network, we're going to see and be able to classify and be able to do something about, right? So we can segment, or we can kick them off the network, for example. I think the challenge becomes, if you read SANS or you look at NIST controls, the very first thing on all those recommendations is know thy network. And I think that's where the program has done an exceptional job of going out and bringing that hygiene to agencies, kind of forcing them to look inside and say, okay, what do I have on my network?
Mm. Dennis, the threat landscape, where should we be looking? What should we be thinking about? And what is Gigamon thinking about as it sort of envisions where to go next, what to do next? Because a big part of success, I imagine, in this arena is thinking ahead, thinking like a chess player.
Yes, and Kevin talked about the first couple of phases of CDM, what's on the network, who's on the network. And the next phase, going into Defend and Beyond, is what's happening on the network. So what that points up is the data transitioning the network needs to be fully visible as well. And you want to make sure that that data gets to the right cybersecurity tools, the Forescouts, the FireEyes, et cetera, so they can do their job extremely well. So you want to be able to see that data, whether it's on the physical network, in the virtual environment, which may never touch the physical network, and as Kevin mentioned, in the future, more and more into the cloud. So having that visibility to the data in motion, so all the cybersecurity tools that agencies had before CDM are getting now within CDM and might use their own funding to acquire, get the data they need so they can do their jobs extremely well. Mm-hmm. Going forward, I think what we're going to see is more and more encrypted data.
Yeah.
Most agencies are reporting 70% or more encrypted data. So you want to make sure you can break and inspect, open up that data so the cybersecurity tools can see that and do their jobs well. If the adversaries can masquerade in an encrypted channel, they can sneak in and they can set up an encrypted channel to exfiltrate data and steal our intellectual property. So I think going forward, we're going to be seeing more and more emphasis on making sure that we know what's happening on the network in encrypted channels as well.
It's very interesting. Tom Welsh.
I'd like to echo Dennis and Greg, my industry partners, on that and offer some additional color from what we're seeing on the front lines. Certainly we see an acceleration of the adversary, not just in their tactics, tools, and procedures, but also looking at increasing convergence of not just geopolitical forces and increasingly kinetic activity, but with cybersecurity.
You see some new challenges. You see some new opportunities, and you see some new uncharted territory is what I was hearing you getting at there, and you're going to have to be very specific about how you figure out how to deal with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Really what we see is the acceleration of the adversary's adaptation. We see not only that in the tactics, tools, and procedures that they're using, but also we see that increasingly in a convergence of the geopolitical forces and sometimes kinetic activity with cybersecurity. One only need look to the recent Triton malware to see an example of that. Mm-hmm. My partners mentioned industrial control systems. In the case of Triton, we had a piece of malware that targeted specifically the safety mechanisms of industrial control systems. Uh-huh. And certainly with cloud, with cloud, adversaries follow the data. And increasingly, with federal workloads and data moving to the cloud, it's vital that we maintain visibility of those workloads and understand how the nature of the attack differs in the cloud.
Okay, we're going to come back to you for some more on that as we continue. On the panel discussion, innovation in Government, Cyber Leaders in CDM, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Radio, a part of the Federal News Network.